Thanks again, everyone, for joining this call. If you are, just a quick note, if you have any audio challenges at all, you can call into the conference line, the phone number that you see in the bottom left of the slides. And same thing if you have internet connectivity issues, which all of us sometimes have now, that's a good way to continue to listen in with us. And one more quick tip is, I know you can see my face as a box here. If at any time in the presentation it's blocking part of it, you can actually just click on it and you can move around the speaker so that we're not in your way. But with that, let's get started. Brianna, can we move quickly to a slide? And I'll say hello. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Rachel Minarchik, and I am the National Philanthropy Director here at SBP. And joining everyone in the chat, I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C., so we can add that to our list of cities. But on behalf of my colleagues and of the clients that we serve across the country, we just want to say thanks for taking the time to join us today. We're really excited to share with you all of the ways that you are helping us to shrink the time between disaster and recovery for folks who need it and who deserve it. And presenting today, we're going to have Liz McCarthy and Zach Rosenburg, our two co-founders, and the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Executive Officer, respectively. So let's take a quick look at our agenda. We're going to start with a snapshot of your impact last year, and then we'll move on to updates on our response to Hurricane Ida and to the tornadoes in Kentucky. That's going to be Liz. And then we'll hand it over to Zach, who's going to take a look forward and tell you about how we are hoping and planning, not hoping, but how we will transform the disaster recovery system to make it work better for all of us. And we've got 3 really big bets for this year that we're hoping will do that. So we're excited to tell you about all of that. The call is scheduled for about 45 minutes of presentation. And in that time, if you have questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat and we will definitely get over to them. We're also going to, when we talk about something, we'll probably put that resource in the chat. So keep an eye there for links and updates, anything like that. Now, thank you for moving the slides, Brianna. We start all of our work at SBP with our client in mind. That's why we're all here today. So I want to introduce you to one of them. Her name's Danielle Mann. She's a mom. She's a mother of 4 teenage children. She's a widow, and she's a teacher. She has a home in Southwest Louisiana that was severely damaged in Hurricane Laura in 2020. The storm ripped off part of her roof and water damaged most of her belongings. So she relocated with her children to Lafayette. Lafayette, I would note, is 75 miles away from this home. But that's what she did till she could figure out how to fix her roof, how to get her house back in order. Her uncle Joseph, who's an Air Force veteran, stayed. And he has been living in the one mold-free room in the home for the better part of 16 months. So for homeowners like Danielle, and like anyone who owns a home, this is your most valuable asset. So losing it for the better part of 16 months has caused tremendous psychological stress, financial stress. In addition, if we think about it, to paying rent, she's also paying to drive. I mean, we've all seen the gas prices. She's driving 75 miles each day to come back and to go to her job and to check on her Uncle Joseph here. So she drives in, she checks on Uncle Joseph, she goes to her job, checks on Uncle Joseph, goes back every day. That's an incredible cost, but I'm very, very happy to share that although it's been 17 months since that storm, way too long for anyone to be displaced, SBP completed home repairs for Danielle and her family on March 4th, just last week. So she is home and safe and whole. And she's also one of 100 clients who will receive a roof built to fortified standards this year. So that means that her roof will be resilient to extreme weather events. You're going to actually hear a little bit more about fortified a couple times today, and actually from Liz, who I'm going to turn this over to right now. Liz is our co-founder and COO, and she's going to tell you more about what drives our mission, share that snapshot of your impact, and talk with you about Hurricane Ida and the December tornadoes. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Liz.
Thanks so much, Rachel. And thanks everybody for being here today. I know it's a busy time and there's certainly a lot going on in our own country and around the world. And our thoughts are with the people of Ukraine during this incredibly difficult time. But just welcome and thank you. And thanks for sharing Danielle's story. I know it touches on a lot of reasons about why we exist at SBP. So I want to talk about a couple of things that we've learned over the years in working with clients and in communities that have been impacted by disaster. So our theory of change is that without time and predictability and access to resources, people can very quickly reach their breaking point. And that is a point that we've seen, unfortunately, many folks can't really return from. And SBP's mission is to shrink the time between disaster and recovery, and specifically so that we can prevent people from reaching their breaking point. And the other thing that we can't ignore is that there's just a lot of realities. Some have become more stark in the last 16 years as we've done this work, including just more extreme weather that's occurring more frequently. The climate is changing, and I think we're all feeling the effects of that. Second thing that we've learned is that the recovery programs that do exist are often not equitable, and they're not serving the very people that they were initially designed to serve in a meaningful way. The third thing is home is really a tipping point between economic mobility and stability and negative generational impacts of not having access to equity and being able over the years to build wealth. And I think the last thing that we've learned is that we can't just be an organization that reacts and rebuilds. Instead, we have to think more holistically about our work. You know, the ideal condition for SBP is that we'd never have to rebuild a home for a client in the first place, because we've done a lot of other work really well to help folks prepare for disasters. So with that, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so here's a snapshot of all of the work that we were able to do thanks to your generous support. So last year, we helped over 1,500 families repair or rebuild their homes. It's a huge number, almost twice as many as we've ever done in prior years. And this includes rebuilding, building new homes from the ground up, doing mucking and gutting and mold remediation immediately after the storm. Really just proud and so thankful of all of the work that folks at our different operating sites and in communities where we responded were able to do. The second thing I want to highlight is the preparedness work, both pre and post disaster. As you can see, we helped provide training to and education to approximately 1 million people last year. And I think one of the things I want to highlight is that if we do this work well and we provide educational materials and training that can move the needle for folks, the road to recovery is a lot shorter. And in some cases, they won't need the help of a group like SBP or some of our partners. So thank you for your support and deep investment in the preparedness work that we're doing. The third thing that I want to highlight is a relatively new program at SBP, and we call it SHAPE. So in addition to directly impacting people via rebuilding and preparedness work, we are also helping government leaders and really thinking upstream. And how can we help and scale our impact that much more significantly? And so what we did in 2021 is we trained approximately 1,000 government leaders and helped them understand how to spend federal dollars that they had been allocated. This is federal disaster funding that they had been allocated that they really weren't able to spend, either because of the complexity of the program and they didn't understand how to navigate it, or they just had a lot of technical questions that the consultants that they were paying weren't able to answer. And so with generous support from the Walmart Foundation, we were able to work with these government leaders who collectively have $34 billion worth of disaster aid money that's going to help tens of thousands of families. And we're going to continue this work because the reality is that 60% of federal disaster money is just sitting on the shelf and it's unspent. And so we see this work as really moving the needle and helping people at scale. So just want to give a special thanks to Reese May and J.R. Sanderson, who are running this program for SBP. And then the last really big accomplishment that you all should feel really proud of is that last year we supported 32 different organizations. We raised approximately $4 million. That's a very different number. $4 million for NGOs who were doing work similar to SBP. We have been raising and distributing funds since Hurricane Harvey in 2017 to the tune of almost $7 million. And that funding collectively has allowed our share partners, we call them our share partners because we share funding, we share training, we share AmeriCorps members, we want to be open source to them. But collectively, those investments that we've made have helped our share partners rebuild homes for 900 families. And these are 900 families that SBP would not have been able to reach or support. And so we're really excited about the great work that the SHARE team did in 2021 and the direction that that program is moving in the future. We know that it will help build the capacity of these organizations by training them on everything from the Toyota production system to how to effectively recruit and utilize AmeriCorps members. So you're going to hear a little bit more about SHARE when we talk about our Hurricane Ida response. But for now, let's go to the next slide, Brianna. Okay, so here is a map of the places that SBP has impacted. As you all know, we started in one community doing one thing. So back in New Orleans in 2006, we started rebuilding families' homes. And what we realized is that that approach alone really couldn't move the needle and couldn't do a lot of the preventative stuff that we've seen that when it's in place can really shrink the time between disaster and prevent people from reaching their breaking point. So we have 5 different interventions today that we have implemented in different states and also Puerto Rico and the Bahamas. So you can see there's a little key off to the right here, shows where we either are or have rebuilt homes. It shows where the different communities where we have done response work, as well as where we've made share investments. And then the 2 other things I think are really important to highlight here is where we've done training, so either pre or post disaster, to help people prepare for and mitigate risk or navigate what can be a really challenging recovery process. And then the last is where we've done government advising. So this is training government leaders on how to design programs and implement funding that they've already received. And without that government advising, money would just sit on the shelf unspent. And so that team is helping to unlock billions of additional dollars in funding that can help rebuild families' homes. So thank you, everybody, and congratulations on all of the incredible work. All right, Brianna, let's hop to the next slide. And so we're going to pause here for a minute and hear from Miss Debra, who has a quick message for all of us.
From Barbara and Debra Hartman and Homer from Hurricane Ida. We want to thank everyone who gave a financial donation, who even just donated supplies. Whatever you did to help us get back home, we thank you. And we ask God to bless you. And we thank you from the depths of our hearts. We're home. We're someplace that other people would probably never be able to go back to. But because of your kind donations, we're back at home. And there is no place like home. And we thank you, thank you, thank you. From Bob.
Great, and I just want to talk a little bit more about Miss Debra and her mom, Miss Barbara. So Debra was caring for her mom, who had been living in a home that her family had owned for decades. Miss Barbara has a lot of health issues, including Alzheimer's. And so it had been a really difficult time in the months leading up to Ida. And then the storm hit and their house was really just torn apart. I'm so happy to report that they are not just back in their home, but they're back in a home with a fortified roof, which means that in the event of a future disaster or even a high wind event, their home is better built and will be able to withstand those events, and they'll be able to be safe and secure. So just thank you so much for your support with Hurricane Ida. And as you can see, in addition to helping Miss Debra, the team worked really hard this year and had some incredible results and impact in the community. They were able to muck and gut, do mold remediation, tarping on 295 families' homes. We have 17 homes completed and counting. We're putting fortified roofs on all the homes that were rebuilding in the Ida impacted area. And in this year, 2022, we will rebuild 75 homes for families. So we're really proud of that. The second thing that I want to highlight that happened during Hurricane Ida is that St. Peter, that's the building that you can see in the bottom right corner that SBP developed back in 2019. It's a 50-unit apartment building, and the majority of the residents are low to moderate income. It withstood Hurricane Ida really well. The building actually is a microgrid, so it has solar panels and backup battery storage. And when Ida hit, many of you may recall, the power was out in New Orleans for a week plus. And at the beginning of September, it was really hot, sweltering heat and humidity. And folks who lived in apartment buildings in many cases were in really unsafe conditions. However, because of the microgrid on St. Peter, we were able to turn the air conditioning on and have refrigeration for some amount of hours every day. And people were able to not just live, but really thrive during a very, very challenging time. And so I wanted to highlight that and just say thanks to everyone who understands the real value of SBP's Opportunity Housing Program. We hope that other developers will see the value in using microgrids so that buildings like this that can really not just withstand storms, but create a safe haven for people during that initial recovery period when power is out. The other thing that I do want to highlight is that in the New Orleans area, we had about 65 homes that prior to Ida had been rebuilt with a fortified roof. And I'm really proud to announce that each and every one of those homes withstood the storm just fine. And the roofs held up really, really well. And they didn't experience any roof damage. So we are proud to report that we're seeing not only that the data on fortified works that we're gathering from our engineering partners and IBHS, but that we see it working with our clients as well. And then the last thing that I want to highlight around SHARE is that we're really excited that we've been able to provide support to 10 different partner organizations as a result of this program. And these are groups that are working in and around New Orleans, and candidly in parishes and communities that are so far outside of the city that we wouldn't be able to service all of them. And so our fundraising team at SBP has done an amazing job of helping us raise money so that we can help them help folks in their own communities. And this includes organizations like the United Way, Catholic Charities, Rebuilding Together, and some smaller organizations as well. And then the very last thing that I want to highlight about Hurricane Ida is that we have been doing FEMA appeals assistance for survivors. And this slide was accurate yesterday, but as of today, we've actually helped survivors access $150,000 of additional funding from FEMA by helping them file appeals. And so what we see happens a lot is that lower income homeowners, and oftentimes this occurs in communities of color, they're being undercompensated by FEMA. FEMA even knows this. They've put out reports and their data is telling the same story. And so by providing the service of helping homeowners apply, not just apply to FEMA, but to appeal the initial award and get additional funding, we can help folks really shrink the time between disaster and recovery and take money that they're getting from FEMA, couple it with private funding that maybe we raise or other organizations raise so that they can rebuild their home and get home faster. So let's go ahead and hop to the next slide. Okay, so this is an example, or this map. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the map of Southeast Louisiana, but this is a map that shows where some of our SHARE partners are. In yellow, those are the communities where SBP is working, and in blue, this is where our SHARE partners are located. So again, you can see really covering a large service area. And I just want to say, thank you to Walmart for helping us help them. We're really excited about the work that our partners are doing and just grateful that we're able to help so many more clients. So with that, if we can hop to the next slide. And I want to introduce you all to Miss Marion. She is a grandmother and she's from Southeast Louisiana. And candidly, the last year has been really challenging for her. The first bit of really challenging news that she received is that her daughter was diagnosed with a terminal form of cancer. And so she took on taking care of her grandkids, who are 2 and 5. A couple of days after the boys moved in, Ida made landfall and blew the roof off of her home and flooded the interior. So she and the boys had to move into a small trailer on their property. The photo on the left shows Marion and Brendan, who's her older grandson, decorating a tree that they put up outside of their home for Christmas. They weren't able to be in the house because it was under construction, but they were able to at least have a tree on their property. And I think, details like this are really important because they show how the road to recovery can be really long, and it can have psychological toll on people as they try to resume some sense of normalcy through all of the chaos and uncertainty that disasters can create. So the team's been hard at work. I'm really happy to say that Marion and her family were able to move back into their home this week. And on Friday, we're hosting a welcome home party for them. So if anyone is passing through Southeast Louisiana or you're in the New Orleans area and you'd like a moment of inspiration, please come join us. I think we are going to send out an invitation with details after the call. So we hope you can make it. So Brianna, can we hop to the next slide? Okay, great. Thank you. So in December, there were widespread tornadoes across parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, and some other surrounding states. There's a map in the lower left-hand corner that shows just how many there were and the severity of those tornadoes. I'm really proud of the fact that our team, even though it was right around the holidays, we had members who raised their hand and said, I'll go and I'll serve and do what I can to help families, because at this time of year, more than ever, people need help and they need hope and they need to understand that people care. So we had people on the ground a few days after the tornadoes, and a lot of work that our team has done has been training both on how to help people navigate recovery, whether it's insurance or FEMA that they're accessing, and just some best practices that they can utilize in terms of both taking care of their home and selecting a contractor. So we are really proud of the work that we're doing in the tornado impacted area. We're also really grateful for the $1.9 million that we've been able to raise so far. That's very significant funding. We have a goal of $4 million, and when we reach that, we are confident that we'll be able to open up an operating site in Kentucky and rebuild homes there for at least 3 years. So I guess I'm giving you all a fundraising plug right now. So thank you very much for your continued support. One other thing that I do want to highlight that we did in the tornado impacted area that we haven't done before is that we gathered together one of the country's most well-known data scientists to put together a presentation that we shared with government leaders and civic leaders in the tornado impacted area about 45 days after this happened. And we shared with them social vulnerability data along with damage data to help them understand where and how some of the federal money that's coming into their area should be spent and invested. And the feedback that we got was really interesting. There were multiple people in the room who said, this is actually a direct quote, but multiple people in the room who echoed the sentiment that this was not just great data, but it was the first data they had seen at all. And so I think we've also uncovered that there's a real need to bring in our data scientists after disasters and help use that data to both educate and arm people in these communities to help figure out and make sure that funding that is available is designated to the communities in the areas that really need it the most. So if we can hop to the next slide. And at this point, I am going to hand it off to Zach. So Zach, you want to go ahead?
Sure, Liz, thanks so much. Super inspiring. And thanks to all of you for investing so generously and robustly in SBP. This isn't even just a tough time in our country, this is a tough time in the world. And I don't, maybe I'm speaking for more than myself, but there's often times when we feel a little powerless and there's stuff we can't control. Liz and I and the team hope that the impact that's being driven by SBP that wouldn't happen without you, that's preventing human beings from being pushed beyond their breaking point, gives you pride, gives you solace. It's something we can control, and it's something that just gives you hope and joy. And so it certainly does to us, and seeing this amazing group of people and the incredible people yesterday as well, knowing stand shoulder to shoulder with us is fortifying. So thank you. We talked about some clients today. We talked about Danielle Mann, who to me is profile and courage. She's a teacher. She's driving 75 miles a day when gas is $5 a gallon. She's her best self for other people's kids, and then she's her best self at home for her own kids. We heard about Miss Marion, who faced the greatest threat, concern any of us could have, which is the health of our kids. Because of you, they're home. But others have suffered. We've talked in the past about the Bennick family, the final home we rebuilt in Brooklyn. Mr. Bennick was is a 9/11 responder, fireman who has cancer tied to his service of our country. He endured 9 years. So many of you have heard us talk about Mr. Lee, the World War II veteran, African-American gentleman who built his own house and then lived 9 years in a home that was making him sicker. We got him home after 9 years, but if we really love and care and honor these people, SBP certainly has to increase our capacity to build more homes and the capacity of other nonprofit groups. But if we really care about this people, we got to prevent the need for suffering and the need for SBP's rebuilding work in the first place. And it's getting to know these clients that have really clarified our vision. I'm really happy to tell you that through 2021, the leadership team worked with this gentleman named George Shaw to build a transformational strategic plan launched in 2022, ending in 2026, that drives the scaled impact and system level changes because the disaster resilience and recovery system is failing too many people. If we think about themes that are germane and central to our existence in America today, there's three that we think rise to the front. There's, without a doubt, climate change. There's racial justice, where we have to do better. And then there's this renewed notion of the importance of home. SBP's work sits in the center of all of them. And this 5-year strategic plan drives the sort of scaled impact and system change work that would want if Miss Danielle, Miss Marion, Mr. Bennick, and these other families were our own families. And so I'm not going to walk you through all of the strategic plan. If you'd like it, we'll send it to you. I would love to sit down with anyone who would love a personal walkthrough with it. Mike Kerner, I'm kind of thinking specifically of you. And so please let us know if you're interested. What I am going to do is introduce some of our top level goals. I'll briefly talk about right now the 3 key drivers. And then we're going to walk through 3 of our big bets. And when we talk about big bets, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily expensive, but they're needle movers. They're must win. They're fulcrum moments that we think are essential to change the systems that are failing the clients that we meet every day and those who don't even make it to us. So Brianna, if you can go to the next slide, please, that would be terrific. Before hitting these 6 top level goals, I do want to talk about the key drivers, just to give you the lens. First of all, partnerships. SBP is about impact, not brand. The way we're going to get to more people, the way we're going to drive the scaled impact and system level change is through partnerships. Second, my screen just changed, I apologize, is technology. And we're going to talk about technology a little bit shortly. And third is these big bets. So let's start running through the way we're committing to make the world look by the end of this strategic plan. First of all, through our advocacy work. And these are some of the goals that fit into these buckets. We want to make sure that 90% of FEMA assistance is awarded within the first 90 days. Right now, it takes 6 months to a year. It's a process that's not predictable. Without a doubt, it's not transparent. It's rife with inequity, and it is a system of constant negotiation and battling and appealing with FEMA. We're committed to making sure that 90% of the assistance is awarded within 90 days, and those are final, full, and fair payments. Second, first batch of money is FEMA. Second batch of money is the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Funds. We commit to making sure that the funds reach people within the first 12 months. Let me tell you how much of a game changer that is. Hurricane Laura happened 19 months ago. Not a dollar of the Community Development Block Grants have made it to the state, and therefore none of it has made it to the people. We're fortunate that we hired the gentleman who ran the award-winning program in South Carolina, J.R. Sanderson, who got the dollars out the door in month 13. And through SBP's advocacy work of training, or advised work of training local government officials, and through the launch of our Recovery Acceleration Fund that we'll talk about shortly, within 5 years, we will have disaster assistance making it to people within 12 months. This is game changing, and it wouldn't happen without you. Second, we can talk about prepare. Again, we don't want to have to rebuild people's houses. One of the greatest ways that we can get resources to people is for them to have the right insurance. So within 5 years, we're going to reach 50 million homeowners with the goal of increasing across the country an uptake of flood insurance by at least 10%. We'll move to advise. Right now, we're all aware there's billions of dollars that's available to local governments. Unfortunately, that money is not just sent to the governments based on their need. The money has to be applied for. And oftentimes what we're seeing is the communities that receive the money are the communities that have the staffing, the awareness, and the bandwidth to go get it. In partnership with Farmers Insurance and Walmart, we're placing recovery acceleration fellows into these communities. It will have a massive impact in racial equity so that communities can access the federal dollars to make their communities more resilient and recover more quickly. We'll move to build. Oftentimes we have seen success in build the way we measure it in terms of the number of homes rebuilt, and we will continue doing that. We commit to rebuilding over 3,600 homes in 10 communities by 2026. However, we're looking at something else as well, and this is through a lens of racial equity. We've seen that too many communities, and especially homeowners of color, go from a positive net worth to a negative net worth after disaster strikes. We understand that by rebuilding homes, we're regaining equity and positive net worth for American families. And this is net worth and equity that can be leveraged for other very important life improving matters: transportation to and from work, education, childcare. We commit to preserving at least $100 million over the next 5 years, and we think that's an awfully big deal. In addition, so that we're working with people not just who are homeowners, but people who live in our communities, but at this point are paying for their housing by renting, we commit to developing at least 550 affordable, resilient, energy efficient units for sale or for rent in 4 or more communities. Moving forward, as Liz talked about, we're proud of a lot of our work, but I think Our share work is one which we're most proud of because it is a manifestation of SBP's commitment to people, not to branding. Last year, as Liz mentioned, we got out just over $4 million to other nonprofit groups. We shared with them the Toyota production system model, and we invested some of our best assets, AmeriCorps members, into these other nonprofit groups. By 2026, we will invest another $35 million into other NGOs that exist in communities that will have, through their gray sky recovery, will have greater blue sky capacity. And that's going to drive the rebuilding of 2,300 homes for families who otherwise would be at risk of being pushed beyond their breaking point. And then finally, and this is a conservative number, but we're thrilled to harness the commitment, energy, passion of 62,000 volunteers and providing them with a best-in-class experience. And while looking at the corpus of our impact and success over the next 5 years, I want to take this moment to thank one partner in particular, and that's Farmers Insurance, who has consistently put their trust in SBP to address systemic issues like the slow and archaic ways that damage is assessed, the slow and unpredictable ways that resources are provided, and impacting the racial inequities in how federal funding is dispersed. Many of the farmers folks who have volunteered with us and who have provided skill-based support or have donated generously in support of our clients are here with us on the call. And farmers, thank you for your generous, ongoing, and game-changing support. We can move to the big bets, which are exciting, and I hope we can talk more about. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to go through 3 of them today. First of all, we can talk about the Recovery Acceleration Fund. What you see here is a letter from Governor John Bell Edwards enthusiastically supporting the launch of the RAF, which will be in May or June of this year. Put simply, the fund addresses the problem of delayed assistance because it will provide immediate loans to homeowners who can't self-fund, therefore who can't access the otherwise fantastic opportunity for reimbursement that's available with some CDBG funds. Reimbursement is a model that works. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for everybody. It only works for people who can self-fund, and our clients are people who can't afford to wait and they can't afford to self-fund. Federally appropriated dollars take at least, and this is at best, 2+ years to reach families, and sometimes upwards of 7, 8, or 9 years. The most vulnerable households are those who need the help the most, and they wait, and their homes lose value, they incur further costs, and they develop health, mental health, and other challenges from the mold, the water intrusion, and the fact that so many of them are being forced to choose between paying mortgage and rent and living in untenable situations. The Recovery Acceleration Fund ensures that the federal and state government reimbursement pathway works for everybody, especially those without resources. We're thrilled that Governor Edwards has written the letter that you see here, and we're thrilled to have a similar one from HUD that gives us the go-ahead to launch the RAF and start bringing families home sooner in the coming months. Next, I'm pleased as punch to talk about technology. We need to make sure that the recovery system in America uses available technology. Indeed, the technology that, among others, the insurance industry is using. And a simple way to do this is by replacing the door-to-door person-dependent damage assessment system with flyover and satellite technology combined with big data. This is something we learned or was inspired indeed by the CEO of Farmers, who shared with me how the insurance industry is utilizing technology, and we believe the disaster recovery system as a whole should as well. FEMA itself, through the FEMA Advisory Committee report, which we're pleased to send with people, has found that their damage awards are distributed unequally. Rice University found that when FEMA money is awarded in an area, Caucasian families increase their net worth and families of color lose net worth. Utilizing satellite technology flyover data and big data, damage awards estimates can be more expedient, transparent, and therefore will also bypass any unconscious bias that's part of a door-to-door process. I also want to full-throatedly and shamelessly promote the Equip app. Lily's going to put a link in the chat box. This is an app that will help you and those you love, your colleagues at work, the people in your community, understand and mitigate risk. It's tied to a checklist system. This is something that we've made in partnership with AT&T, and it helps users reduce risk and build resilience before disaster and avoid the common recovery obstacles like contractor fraud and navigating FEMA after disasters. It is in your phone's app store, and we'll include a link in the chat box. Please try it out. Tell us what you think. Finally, I'm pretty darn excited to talk with you about our opportunity housing work. To date, we've developed and rented or sold more than 250 units. While we're proud of that number, it's not big enough. It's not making a dent in the full need to create affordable housing in this country. Our value isn't just quantity, however, it's quality and it's innovation, like we talked about with St. Peter. Here you see a photo of a young woman. Again, this is profiles in courage or integrity. Her name is Jasmine. She, to me, is the American dream. She's working 3 jobs. She's 24, but she bought a house with the express purpose of being able to pass on an asset to her children. That is as powerful as there is. She was a child of Katrina. She was displaced, and she understands how much sustainability and family equity means to her and her kids' future. And again, I am so proud of the fortified work that we're doing. Any opportunity house that we're creating is created using the fortified standard. Thank you, travelers, for your generous support. And thanks also to GAF, who is providing both technical and product support so that these homes are deeply, deeply resilient. We're working to share this model widely to teach other organizations about how and why they should and can use fortified standards in solar power. We are expanding our opportunity housing work from New Orleans and Houston into Puerto Rico and other communities as well. With that, I really am dying to hear any questions from you. I want to thank each and every one of you for really preventing our people from the unthinkable. We're so thankful for you. We're honored to have you as partners, and would love to hear any feedback or questions that you may have.
Hey, Zach, this is Rachel. We've been keeping an eye on the chat, and Blake Perez actually asked a really good question earlier that I want to highlight. He just asked about the share numbers. He said, how do those numbers figure into the ones we showed earlier? We said we had about 1,500 homes that we had either repaired or rebuilt in 2021. And where were the 900 share homes? Now, Liz and Zach, yeah. I believe the 900 share homes, I just want to check what I said in the chat. That was since the beginning, inception of 2017 of the program, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And last year, in 2021, our share partners rebuilt, I think it was 323 homes. So of the 1,513 homes that we rebuilt last year, just over 300 of them were built by our share partners. So thanks for the question and clarification point there, Blake.
Yeah, thank you. So any other questions from, okay, one from Javier who asks, will there be affordable housing projects slated for Puerto Rico?
Javier, we are working on that. There would give us no greater joy than being able to build units both for sale and for rent in Puerto Rico. And we understand that, like a lot of other communities, the cost of housing has gone up considerably in Puerto Rico. And I think that is probably attributed both to the reduction in available housing stock as a result of Hurricane Maria and some other things that are going on related to tax incentives in Puerto Rico that are encouraging people to move there. And so, yes, yes, we are definitely working on that.
Thanks, Liz. And I want to give a shout out to my colleagues in Puerto Rico, because I know that y'all passed the 200 homes rebuilt mark, and that was a few months ago. So I know you're far past it now. But what I noticed when my colleagues shared that was they said that SBP has rebuilt more homes in Puerto Rico than any other organization on the island. So we're really, really leading there. And I know we have folks on the call right now who've contributed specifically to that. So thank you to those of you who've made all of that possible, particularly Mr. Jacques. Thank you. What else? I had one question, actually. Oh, someone asked whether SBP still needs volunteers in the coming months and where. So actually, Brianna, that's a great transition. If we can hop to the next slide. Yes. SBP definitely needs volunteers. We absolutely, Elvis, you can see Elvis in the chat. He is another colleague from Puerto Rico. We need volunteers in Louisiana, in Puerto Rico, in Houston. And if that is something you're interested in, then please, you can pop your name in the chat. We're going to follow up with a link. You can sign up right away to do that. We have groups come, we have families who make this a special trip and a way to be of service while they're seeing a new part of the country or the world. So you can visit San Juan, and you can also change someone's life by bringing them home faster. So yes, and so many different ways I would add to be involved. You heard that we are still working to raise more money for our December, our tornado response work. So absolutely, if you are liking what you hear today, I am thinking about either renewing your support or making an additional gift. It will be used right away. And thank you for that. And then also we're expanding, we're hiring. We are looking for folks. You just heard Zach talk about 3 big bets. We have really big plans over the next 5 years, and we're building out a team of fantastic people to make sure we can achieve it. And I can tell you, as someone who's been here for 6 months, that I love the people I work with. This is a really lovely group of people, because the people who are here to do the kind of work that you just saw. We hear about Miss Danielle, we hear about Mr. Bennick, and we think, wow, this organization is really making a difference. And if you could be a part of that, it's really special. As a hands-on volunteer, I have a question here, 2 questions. So Tom, as a hands-on volunteer, when do you expect tornado recovery operations to open? Any progress on vol housing? I'm not sure about that question. And then Cheryl, thank you, Tom. I'm going to give it a 1-2, and then Zach and Liz can decide. Cheryl also asked, how do you decide which disasters to respond to? And how do you determine how much to do in a particular community after disaster, which is such a great question. We always want to be the value add. So quick logistics on volunteer, and then this bigger picture question.
Yeah, sure. And thanks for the questions, y'all. We appreciate it. So the tornado rebuilding operation will open when I can't even, it's hard to say this out loud, so I apologize, but when we hit our fundraising target, we want to be able to commit to a certain number of years. We do not want to be the kind of organization that goes in, is there, and then just sort of leaves very quickly and suddenly. We're committed to long-term recovery. And so we have a gap, and when we hit that gap, fill that gap, then we will make that announcement. Our goal is to have that announcement made in April and be up and running very shortly thereafter. With that will come recommendations for housing for volunteers. Likely and hopefully there'll be plenty of options available, from volunteer camps to hotels at different price points. So
hey, Liz, will you also talk about the other work that we're doing now in Kentucky as well? So that's the rebuilding work itself. But if you can walk through what else we're doing, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned earlier, we have been sharing data with government leaders in the tornado impacted area. We are identifying share partners and we'll be releasing an RFP so that local organizations can apply for funding to do immediate response and also long-term recovery. We're training other nonprofit organizations on how to do FEMA appeals work. I sent an update saying that our FEMA appeals team in Southeast Louisiana, where we're doing IDA work, has reached $234,000 in additional funding for clients, which is great. We want to replicate that in the tornado impacted areas and help clients appeal to FEMA using the SBP team, but also utilizing local organizations in the area. So there's a bunch of other things that are going on in Kentucky right now before we launch the rebuilding program. And then Cheryl, maybe I can hop in here and answer your question as well. So, figuring out where to respond to a disaster, I think is sort of a blend of an art and science, I guess you'd say. And really what we want to be doing is working in communities where people who live there match our client profile. And so people who are really going to struggle with recovery, who are under-resourced, and also where there aren't a lot of other organizations that have committed to staying around for the long term to do rebuilding work. And so while we can't do that in every community, right now we're really focusing on communities that have been impacted by wind or water events that fit that profile. And as you saw on the map earlier, the other thing that we're trying to do in communities where we can't go and set up an operating site for various reasons is either to provide share funding, to provide training right after the disaster, to do government advising and to train government leaders on how to design programs and spend federal money that they've been getting. Those are the sorts of other things that we can offer in communities if we're not there rebuilding ourselves. So hopefully that answers your question. And then Scott, thanks for your question about the Kentucky RFP. We're going to send it out to everybody that we know, and we will definitely add you to that list. We have contact information for lots of different folks within the community in Kentucky. And then if you have other additional thoughts about how we can share that, please let us know.
All right. I want to say, and I know Liz and Zach want to say, just thank you again. And don't worry, I'm pausing between my words to be sure if anyone has questions that they just haven't typed in yet. Take your time, you could still do that. But firstly, just wanted to again say thank you to everyone, every single person on this call. We wouldn't be able to do anything we just described without your support, without your time that you volunteer, without the trust that you put in us, without your investments, and really essentially your partnership. And that takes everyone that you see on this screen and all of the individual people who I know are here. And we're just so grateful to you. There's a lot of work, as you could see, and we have big plans for the next 5 years. And we feel really energized hearing from you and having your attention to our report back to you. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. And please be in touch if you have questions, comments, ideas. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you.
Yeah. And last thing, you will get an email. Everything you saw in the chat is coming right back to you in your email. And same thing with the recording of the call. That'll come a little later in the week so we can make it an easy link for you to access, like a YouTube link. And you don't have to type in a Zoom password. So that's all coming right to you. And we're very, very, again, grateful. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Have a great afternoon, everyone.